At 48, Jeff Weiss ran his first 10K, and by 61, he finished a 72-mile ultramarathon. This is a powerful episode where Jeff shares how movement, mindset, and audacity can transform your health and your life, no matter your age.
As always, Kelly, well said. Let's get to it. Okay, welcome to the Fit Over 50 podcast. My name is Mark Patrick, and that lovely lady next to me is my co-host, Kelly. Hey, Kelly, how are you doing today?
Good morning. So good.
Awesome. We have a great guest today. Jeff, I'm looking forward to hearing your story today. What we're going to do is Kelly will do a short intro on you, and then I want to dig right into your background and your story, if that's okay with you, man.
It is. Thanks so much. Great to be here.
All right, Kelly, go
Jeff,
for it.
we're so excited to have you and learn more. So our guest today is Jeff Weiss. He is the author of Racing Against Time. And his story is one really of relentless reinvention. And he ran his first 10K at 48 years old. He's given us all hope. And then he finished 2 Ironmans and a triathlon, or an Ironman triathlon, I should say, and a 72-mile ultra marathon between the ages of 57 and 61. So right there should be giving you a lot of hope. He's also an accomplished entrepreneur, and he holds master's degrees in international law and biotechnology. So today we are diving into how to extend your health span, and we're also going to talk about the courage that it takes to do that and the bold steps that we can take in midlife. So Jeff, thank you so much for being here, and we're excited to learn how to live decades longer than any of us thought possible.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So, Jeff, maybe you could I'm sure you've shared your story before, but why don't you share your background, what got you into doing these marathons and the Ironman, and, let's dig into that first and foremost, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, of course. When I was younger, when I was in college, I was a tennis player. After college, needed to find a replacement sport, got into powerlifting. Did that fairly seriously for a few years, and then got married, had 4 kids, and then, through all the pressures and time demands of building a family, kind of launching a career, fitness, I think for me very much took a back seat, like I think it does for a lot of us. I continued to lift, but without kind of the same sort of diligence and consistency as I had before. And then when I was in my late 40s, my father passed away, and that I think for a lot of us, losing a parent is a time for kind of reflection about where we are, where we're going. And, I think for me, and I think this is another kind of common thing, fitness was something, it gnawed at me that I wasn't being serious about my fitness. But I always felt like, well, I'll attend to that when I have more time, when, things are kind of easier at home, easier at work. And it struck me that at 48, this was the time. There wasn't any more kind of deferring it into the future. And so took a running class of all things, the goal of which was to do a 10K at the end of the class, and did that, and then kind of got bitten by the bug. And like a lot of runners, kept doing races, and then kept sort of looking for kind of new mountains to climb, longer races, faster times. And that was what kind of opened things up for me.
How old was your dad when he passed away, if you don't mind me asking?
He was 75.
Okay. And how did that trigger you to start looking at your own mortality? Is that basically what got you into the fitness here? A little bit deeper?
Yeah, I think as we get older and we see folks that we love, kind of reach the end of their lives, I think one thing that we see is at some point, if you're not serious about your health, you may get some second chances along the way, but at some point you do kind of run out of those. And there can be serious consequences for not being serious about your nutrition, not being serious about your fitness. And so I think for me, that was just an eye-opening thing. And literally the moment when it happened, I was at my mom's house, helping her downsize, helping move furniture from the house to Goodwill or into storage. And it just hit me that I really want to continue to be energetic and vital and strong, but I've got to start getting serious, or I'm just going to, I'm going to lose those things.
So what made you get into running? I mean, you're a big guy. I don't know how, I mean, you look like you're a pretty big guy, probably 240, 250 or above. How did you decide to get into running? Because as a big guy, that's certainly something that, most big guys don't get into.
I
Okay.
was
I don't
like,
know how to word that shit, but you're a big guy. What the hell made you get into that crap? How's
I was
that?
a little over 220 when I started. Now I'm about 203, 204.
Okay.
Um, I think for me, I always thought of running as great exercise, and I always my my wife at the time was a fantastic runner, a fantastic 10K runner. I always admired that. I always wished I could be more like that. And so it was always in the back of my mind that running was a neat thing to do, that it was great for your cardiovascular health. And all those years that I lifted, I really did almost nothing for my heart. And so I think that seed had always kind of been there, that running was an important thing to do, and I really ought to try to take it seriously. And then I met a guy who was bigger than me. He'd been a high school football player, and he got into running, lost 100 pounds, ran a marathon, and he was telling me his story. And he told me that before he started to run, he had always felt that he was too big to run, that everything hurt when he ran, that running wasn't for big guys like him. But he gave it a shot, really applied himself, and really became accomplished at it. And so as I heard his story, I thought, well, those were all my excuses too. And if he can do it, maybe I can try it as well. So that's what kind of launched me. And yeah, the rest
So
followed from that.
what got you, what do we got to do to qualify for an Ironman? I mean, I don't think you could just walk in, or can you just walk in and sign up?
You actually can just walk in and sign up. But if you haven't done the training, unless you're some kind of extraordinary athlete who's doing something else incredibly demanding, you're not going to be able to finish it. It's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile cycle, and then a full marathon. And you have 17 hours to complete the race. I think for me, and I think for most people who do it, you basically climb the ladder. You start off with the shortest of the triathlon distances, the sprint. Then you progress to the Olympic distance, then the half Ironman distance, and then ultimately to the Ironman. And for me, it was about 7 years from my first sprint triathlon until I took on the full Ironman.
That is amazing. So here, I want to read this. So here's the average age of an Ironman triathlon competitors. I got this off of Cheat GPT. So a study of Ironman events found that the mean age of winners was 31.9 years for men and 31.6 years for women. The average competitor is about between 30 and 35 years old here. Here's some interesting statistics on times. This blew me away. So pick an age group, 18 to 24, 25, 29, 30, 34, 35, 39, 40, 44. I want to compare the times to them compared to older times. Kelly, pick a time.
9 hours.
No, age group. I'm sorry, pick an age group. Sorry, too much
No,
caffeine this morning.
Figure 45.
Okay, so listen to this. A 45 to 49-year-old finishes this. The average median time is 12 hours, 55 minutes, and 46 seconds for a male. For a female, it's 13 hours and 33 minutes and 51 seconds. Now, you would think as you get way up there in age, above 60, that dramatically changes. It really doesn't. This blows my mind. It is literally, for a 65-year-old, it goes from 12 hours and 55 minutes to 13 hours and 48 minutes, less than an hour for the men. What's even more mind-boggling is the differential between women and men is in minutes. It's not in hours.
Yeah, the longer the distance, the less significance there is to gender differences. In ultramarathon in particular, there have been a number of times where a woman has won outright the entire race, not just the female category, but the race as a whole. It happened at Badwater a couple times. That's considered to be one of the hardest foot races in the world, 135 miles, starting in Death Valley, California, and a woman has won that at least 2 times outright. So yeah, the women who compete in these things are pretty remarkable.
That is crazy. So the average time is 12 hours and 35 minutes overall. The average time for women is 13:35 across all age groups and 12:38 for men. That's incredible.
I'm
13
below
hours.
average.
Oh, listen, there's no below average, man. So I mean,
You're
you competed in the
finishing.
first one at what age?
I was 57 for my first and 59 for my second.
That's
Um,
amazing. So
but
we had David on, and David, what did he do? Kilimanjaro? At what age was that?
He did. Yeah, he was 58 when he did Kilimanjaro. He was 61 when we interviewed him, but he didn't start till he was 57. He's in the Scottsdale area. And he also attorney, professional, and kind of had that life epiphany moment where the doctor said, "You're probably going to have a heart attack," and he
wow,
decided Kilimanjaro was going to be the goal, and he
good for him.
did it.
That's
Yeah, the
amazing.
story of what he had to do to train for that was pretty incredible. But okay, so what did we learn from going? So let's take it through your first Ironman and take us back to what that was like. Maybe you could go
Yeah.
through what your expectations were and what it was really like, especially on those long runs.
Um, it's funny. I think that intellectually, I knew it would be a brutal day, but I was fairly optimistic at the start. I think, and the second time I did Ironman, it was a different experience because I knew without a doubt that it was going to be a horrible day. But for the first one, I was, pretty excited. Thought it was going to be a great day, and then actually almost had a disaster within like the first 90 seconds. Went into the water. The water was a lot colder than I had expected it to be, and I experienced a cold shock. So started to hyperventilate. Couldn't keep my face submerged. A few people actually dropped out of the race because of that, and my heart was racing. And so it took me a couple minutes to kind of organize myself, calm myself down, and then persevere through the swim. And then the swim actually ended up being, quite a nice experience. It was a wonderful day, a nice course. And then the bike is where, really I think the reality starts to set in that this is going to be a long, challenging day. The cycle took me over 7 hours. And then after finishing that, I had to do the marathon, which took me a little over 6 hours. So
That's what I was going to ask you. The pecking order is swim, because I forget. I haven't watched one of these in a
Bike
long time.
run.
Swim, bicycle run. Then you finish up with a nice, easy marathon run after
Marathon.
that for sure. There.
yeah, and that what they tell you, what a lot of the coaches will tell you, and it's great advice, is in your mind you need to chunk the race into smaller segments because if you all day long are thinking, oh my God, I've got to do, you're swimming and thinking I've got to ride 112 miles. You're riding and you think I've got to still run a marathon. It'll overwhelm you emotionally, and you really do have to hold yourself together. The emotional piece is perhaps every bit as important as the physical piece, and so I think during the swim, I decided to chunk it based on buoys. There are buoys like every 200 yards, and I just told myself just go from buoy to buoy. And before I knew it, the swim was over. And then with the cycle, it was actually 3 18.5 mile out and backs. So I focused just on each individual segment of that. And then for the run, there were about 4 segments adding up to the 26 miles, and just tried to keep my head in the current segment, and told myself that I wouldn't even think about finishing until mile 24. When I got to mile 24, I decided it was still too early and didn't think about it until mile 25. Didn't allow myself to tell myself, you are going to succeed, you're going to finish. And finishing an Ironman is quite exciting because the tradition is they call out your name, and whether you're male or female, they say the same thing. You are an Ironman, which is which is quite moving.
That is powerful. What a great strategy for the event and for life to break it down, one step at a time, the next thing in front of you. Don't get too overwhelmed or too far ahead of yourself. So great practical strategy. And Jeff, I'm thinking about maybe some of our listeners right now who are not runners and they're just daunted at the idea of, an Ironman is incredible. Tell us about that first 10K. You're 48 years old. You said that really changed everything for you. What do you remember about that race emotionally, physically? That our listeners maybe could get some inspiration from.
Well, I think for me, and to be clear, I'm not of the view that everybody should be running marathons or doing triathlons or doing Ironman triathlons for that matter. For me, it has been a great framework for staying focused on my fitness, for building toward goals and all of the rest, and for the life lessons that I feel like I get out of these particular kinds of races. What I do think is that we should all be looking seriously at our, at our fitness options, and taking that, really, really seriously if we want to age well. But each person's path is going to be different. And I think the key is to find something that speaks to you, that challenges you, that is fun for you in a particular way, so that you'll want to keep doing it. But with respect to that first 10K, I had tried a 10K when I was 17, ran the first 4 miles and ended up walking the last 2. I was just too beat. And it always annoyed me, kind of below the surface, that I hadn't been able to run the whole distance. So when I took the class, I was excited at the idea that I might be able to actually do a whole 10K. And so I just remember it was cool to be out there. It was a big race, the Veterans Day 10K in DC, about 2,300 runners. It was just high energy to be out there with, and it's a beautiful area. You're running a lot along the Capitol Mall, which is quite scenic. And then like the last maybe quarter mile, I could see the finish, and realized, oh my God, like I'm going to do it. Like I've run this whole distance. I'm going to do something at age 48 I couldn't do at age 17. And so it was thrilling. It was really rewarding to actually cross that finish line, and really kind of almost immediately felt bitten by the bug, and then felt like I wanted to run one faster. And so wanted to lower my time to below 1 hour. Took me 3 or 4 tries to accomplish that, and then started to think about maybe going farther, maybe a 10 miler, maybe a half marathon. And then, it's funny, like at the beginning, the marathon itself seemed ridiculous. I told somebody once that I was as likely to walk on the moon as I was to run a marathon. But then, as you climbed each rung of the ladder, the next rung didn't seem so nutty. And so when I did the half marathon, it's like, well, maybe the marathon's not so crazy. Maybe that actually is within reach. So I think for me, that's a great process, and it's a great thing that you can translate to other areas of your life, which at the end of the day, I think is a huge part of the justification for really applying ourselves to fitness. Like, what life lessons are we getting that we can use in other areas? This whole chunking thing, the point you made earlier, I think it is a good life philosophy. Just, deal with the task at hand, and don't overwhelm yourself by thinking too far ahead. Setting goals, they talk about in business how important it is to be resilient, to be gritty, to learn from failure. Well, I think races are a great way to kind of create those experiences in a very controlled environment. You're not going to go out there and set yourself up to risk failure in other life situations, but actually in fitness, you can push yourself right up to the edge and, either succeed and have that great accomplishment, or perhaps not, but maybe learn some important lessons from that.
I think it's interesting, something that you said, that 17, you didn't follow through on it, and maybe that gnawed at you for a while, or maybe you just kind of forgot about it, but that was unfinished business. It's kind of like the Rocky Balboa movie where he's like, I got some gas in the gas tank, I got to get rid of there. And I think that's, I would basically relate it to that. So you were obviously a 10K and doing an Ironman, or we haven't even gotten to the Ultramarathon, which I want to get to in a second. How long did you chomp at the bit? And then what was the preparation, training, and things like, how many calories were you taking in, or was it just, whatever? I'd love to hear the story behind all that.
I did my first 10K in November of 2010. Ended up doing my first half marathon about 10 months later, I think September of 2011. Followed a training program that I downloaded from the internet. And basically, when I started to get into fitness, I started to read a lot about fitness, memoirs from people who had done similar things, to kind of learn from their experiences. And honestly, that's part of why I wrote the book. It's the kind of book that, I would have enjoyed reading myself when I was at the start of the journey, just to see, one person's experiences and the kinds of things that they did, and the kinds of problems they faced, and the kinds of solutions they came up with. But I also read, more technical things, advice on training, advice on nutrition, hydration, and tried to learn from all of that. As I did more of it, met people who were more experienced than me, used to, pick their brains about different aspects of racing. But so I did that half marathon in September of 2011. And then tried to decide what next. And a month or so later decided, you know what, I think I'm going to try for the full. And so ended up signing up for the Marine Corps Marathon, which was in October of 2012. So about a year going from the half marathon to the marathon. Once again, downloaded a training program from the internet, followed it, probably made a few mistakes along the way, got injured, but thankfully saw a good physical therapist and recovered just in time to do the race and to finish it successfully. And that's a cool race to do. It's a big city marathon. I think over 20,000 participants, at least back then. And it is truly run by the Marines. And when you finish the race, the Marine second lieutenant salutes you and puts the medal over your neck, which in the shadow of the Iwo Jima Memorial. So that is quite a thrilling moment.
That is cool. Well, clearly this is a mind, will, emotion, body. I mean, everything. You're tapping into all things. So physically in your book, you talk about some severe cramping, some exhaustion that happens mid-race. What's going through your mind at that moment? How do you keep going when the physiological, because mentally you can come up with some stuff, but physiologically when you're cramping, or like you said, when you got in the water, what keeps you going?
I think the one thing that I've always tried to do, and I've been largely successful, is just to try to keep my wits about me. And unexpected things will often happen, and especially in longer races. And there for sure is going to be pain. Although usually the pain kind of plateaus at a certain level. It'll continue at that level, but it doesn't kind of continue to infinity, which is a comforting thing. If you've done enough races, you realize, okay, like I think Anne Treson, who's a very famous female ultra runner, once said that it hurts, but only to a point. And I think there's a lot of truth to that in my experience. So I try to keep my wits about me and just problem solve. I used to think of myself as like, Captain Kirk on the bridge of the Enterprise, and the ship is being attacked, and you just have to problem solve. Okay, I'm gonna, haven't been taking enough nutrition. I need to eat more. Haven't been drinking enough. I need to drink more. I've got a cramp. I may need to take in some salt, or or change kind of the pace at which I'm running. But that's kind of the key, is just to problem solve and to try to just maintain at all times forward progress.
And I bet there's an incredible community. I've only done one triathlon. It was a multi-sport adventure. So it was 12 miles of mountain biking through mountains. And then it was a 3-mile canoe and a 5K run. And I get out there and I start and I'm like, why did you sign up for this?
Yeah.
I just started like you taste your lungs, and I'm like, okay, hold on. I'm like, because you want to win, you don't want to lose, and you're just. And I actually did wind up winning for my age group.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, that was a long time ago, and it was a lot of fun. But I don't know that I'm that competitive anymore.
That's
anyway
that I see in the side of the road in marathons. This seemed like a good idea when you signed up.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kelly. Sorry.
I was going to say the importance of community. I get the impression that while everyone is competing, we talk a lot about community at this stage of our lives. Some people tend to really isolate or not know where to find new people. What kind of community did you find in this marathon, ultra, and triathlon community?
It's a great question. I think for me, early on, it is a real community, ultras and triathlon both. And I love the races themselves, and I love, everything surrounding the races. And it's great to be around people who get it, who are crazy in the same way that I am. I think that's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of passion, and people enjoy talking about their experiences. And when I was getting started, I was always talking to more experienced folks and getting advice, and everybody that I ever met was gracious about that. What I have not been good about, honestly, is finding ways to train with groups. Other people I know do it, run with groups, cycle with groups. And from everything I can tell, I think that's a wonderful thing to do. And if people have an ability to do it, I strongly encourage it, because I think community makes so many things easier. Unfortunately for me, I train typically early, not quite as early as I used to, but early, to be able to fit it in before my workday starts. And so I can't be very flexible about when I do my training, how I do my training. And so that's kind of forced me to be pretty solitary about it. But I do think a better way, if possible, is to try to make it more social.
So is it true that a lot of people, when they train for like a marathon, they would typically run like a 8, 10, 12 mile day or something like that? They don't run the whole marathon in a training session. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure,
Or
I
just
think
curious?
pretty much every marathon program, it, and typical periods for them 16 to 20 months, 16 to 20 weeks, and basically everyone has more or less the same features, which is anywhere from 3 to 6 days a week of running. One of which is a long run, a long slow run, typically done on the weekend, and you progressively increase the distance of that long run. And what is pretty standard is your longest run is 20 miles. And so when you run the marathon, you will not have run for that particular training session. You will not have run longer than 20 miles. And that seems to work out well. And I think the feeling is if you try to push it and go 22, 24, do a whole distance, you're just encouraging injury risk. And you don't want to do that. And it seems like the 20 miles is enough to have you ready. And certainly that's been my experience. In fact, for a lot of my marathons, and I've now run 13 and then a bunch of ultras on top of that. Very often my longest run has been a little bit less than 20, and that still seems to be fine.
So how is the dynamic different from a marathon versus an Ironman? What is you have to train obviously different for that. Is it obviously more taxing on your body? I mean, can you give us a little insight into that? Look, I'm going to live through you, man, Jeff. I'm never going to do this stuff. Okay, so I got two torn meniscus and bone on bone, so I'll stick with my jump rope, man. So,
Yeah.
but
Well, I
I'll
think
live
jumping
through
rope
you
is amazing.
vicariously.
Um, I think, look, for the marathon, you could train for a marathon on, maybe 6, 7, 8 hours a week of training. For the Ironman, it is more. I think for me, at its peak, it was closer to 12, 13, 14 hours a week. You have to do, I always cross train even when I'm just doing a running event. So I always also swim. I always also bike. I don't want to just run because running can be pretty punishing on the body. So I like to mix it up with other sports. But when you're training for an Ironman, you really do have to do a lot of cycling, and enough swimming to be able to handle that distance. But the swimming is truly the least important part of the event because it's so much shorter as compared to the other two legs.
But where did you train to swim? Did you train in like an Olympic pool, or did you go into a lake, or what did you do?
I trained entirely indoors. For the first one, I was living in an apartment in Manhattan, and my building actually had a pretty nice pool, so I swam there. For my second one, there was a community pool not far from my apartment. I was living in Florida for that one, and I trained there. But again, for both races, did all my training indoors, which is not perfect because it was a little bit disorienting, especially that first Ironman, to get into a cold, dark lake, especially early in the morning when it's not that light outside and you got hundreds of people around you thrashing in the water with you. It can be a little disorienting, but
Well, if you train here in Florida in a lake, you can have a training partner called an alligator, and you'll probably have your best damn time.
I love
So
that. That's true.
Might go faster. It might be
Yeah,
motivation.
exactly.
Jeff, so you're in Tel Aviv now. Are you training? Is it safe? Are you training indoors? Are the conditions good there? The air quality? I mean, what's it look like today?
It's been a hot, humid summer. It's still fairly hot. I think still reaching up to 80. In the last few months, in April, I ran the London Marathon, and about 2 weeks ago, ran the Berlin Marathon. My current project is there are 6 original world major marathons: London, Berlin, Tokyo, Chicago, New York, and Boston. And if you finish all 6, you then get a special 6-star medal. And there are thousands of people around the world who are chasing after this at any one time. And so I've joined into this particular project. And so I've run Tokyo. I did Tokyo in 2024, this past year, Berlin and London. And so I still have the 3 American ones to do. Probably next will be Chicago. If not Chicago, then it'll be New York. Then the following year, I'll do the other one of those 2. And then finally, the goal is to finish with Boston.
Boston.
Okay.
Wow. That's incredible.
let's talk ultra marathon. Hey, Kelly, we had somebody on our show originally when we were doing this. Was it a she?
Yeah, it was Dr. Amy. Yeah, Amy is a has her doctorates in physical therapy, and she is a world-class breath expert. And she will get dropped into the desert and run out, dropped into a, I mean, she does it all with breath work. She doesn't get sore, and she does ultras frequently. She just had a baby, so not right now. But yeah, it was Dr. Amy,
Okay,
and the
yeah.
combination of her breath work has helped her.
Jeff, she would literally do back to back, like, right after one, right after the
Ultras,
other ultra marathons there. So,
100 miles.
so
Yeah.
we got to get you to level up, man, like Amy,
Yeah, I'm
man.
telling you. I'm telling you. She does sound
And
next
Amy's
level.
in her just turned like
There's
42, so
there's always the bar higher, as you
Yeah,
know, in this competitive sport.
yeah,
So,
very
so
much so.
why don't you tell everybody what the heck an ultra marathon is and what that is about? Because there's marathons, then there's the level up from that. So.
It's funny when I was first contemplating an ultra, a friend of mine who had run several told me that his favorite running quote was, "Any idiot can run a marathon, but it takes a special kind of idiot to run an ultra." Basically, an ultra marathon is any race that's longer than a marathon, that's longer than 26.2 miles. The most common standard distances are 50 kilometers, which is 31 miles, 50 miles, and 100 miles. And now even there are 200-mile races, and even slightly longer. And then you have some unusual distance races. The 72-mile one that I ran is called Midnight Express. It's a race around Lake Tahoe. You start on the Nevada side and make your way around to the California side, all the way around the lake, and then finish back at the point where you started. For me, I got bitten by the bug to try a very famous, it's actually the world's largest and oldest ultramarathon. It's a 56-mile race in South Africa called the Comrades Marathon. And I tried it in 2018 when I was 56. And actually that race has cutoffs. You have to hit by a particular time. I got cut after 51 miles. I missed the cutoff by a minute 44. But it was a fantastic experience for me. It was 11 hours of running. And part of why I loved the experience was before I set foot on that course, I decided to set my next kind of stretch goal. And my next stretch goal, actually a kind of a combined goal, was to do a half Ironman the following year and a full Ironman the year after. And so I failed at Comrades, but succeeded with those other races. And so for me, that failure led very, very directly to accomplishments that I really, really treasured. So, I think to me, one of the great lessons was we should be willing to risk failure, and we might actually fail, and that's okay. It's not going to kill us. And we really have to just try to, learn from it. Jim Murphy has this wonderful line that failure is feedback. And I think that's a really good way to think about those kinds of setbacks.
Well, one of the things I've learned from some of the top people in self-improvement that I've applied to my life is this: if you set your fulfillment up for learning, not doing, this way you're always going to have something to improve on, and even your failures are your most rewarding learning, best learning experiences, so to speak. So.
Absolutely. I mean, I used to tell my kids in sports, you should win every single game you play. And it's like, of course you're not going to win every game you play. It's not possible, but it depends on how you define winning. And if you define winning as, I'm going to have a great experience, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to have fun, I'm going to be a good teammate. With that definition, you can win every single game that you play. And that should be the goal.
If you learn, you don't lose. Yes,
so are you a big guy out there running these ultra marathons compared to a marathon runner, or no? Because some of these guys are, pretty, what's the word I'm looking for, Kelly?
Petite?
They're thin. They have a runner's body. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're sporting, 200 pounds, they might go behind you to get some drafting going there or something like that. So
yeah, no, I'm not a good size, certainly for marathons. For triathlons, those guys do tend to be a little more muscular, a little bit bigger. I'm still probably on the heavy side for triathletes. And look, in general, I'm not fast at any of the sports that I do. And in some ways, honestly, I feel like that's what makes my story a little more relatable, because I'm not one of these guys who the first time he set foot on a marathon course ran a Boston qualifying time and is, really burning things up. There's a famous guy named Bruce Fordyce who won the Comrades Marathon 9 times, just an extraordinary athlete. And he has this great line: if you want to be an elite athlete, you need to choose your parents well. And, there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, You look at Michael Phelps in swimming. You look at people who play center in the NBA. You look at the great marathoners. You do need to have a body that is suited for the particular sport at which you are seeking to excel. And we obviously our hard work is crucially important too. There's no question about that, because there are quite a few people who have the right body type for particular sports. But if you don't have the right body type, you're going to struggle to be an elite, but you can still be competitive.
Plus, you got to have the goodies, man. You got to have that inside burning desire, because that's going to carry you for sure. There's Kelly. Go ahead. Then I have a question.
No, and I was just thinking about genetics. So you mentioned you have 4 children. Have any of them followed in your footsteps? Are they competitive? You said they had done some sports. Are they just cheering you on, proud of you? Do they think you're crazy?
They're like, Dad's leaving. Okay, good. He's going to be over running. We got some peace here today. So.
Yeah, no, all 4 kids played sports through high school. One played through college. My 2 boys both played hockey. One of my boys played hockey through college. And my 2 daughters were soccer players. So yeah, I think everybody enjoyed sport. My oldest son actually is quite a great runner. Has focused so far on the 5K distance and does some extraordinary times. I'm quite envious. He actually ran in a race once, and it was an out and back course, and he finished second and actually led for a good part of it. And after the race, I was asking him, like, what was that like to be in the lead? It's an experience I've never had, I never will have. And he said it was pretty extraordinary. He said as he was running back, and I've experienced this from the vantage point of the pack, he said the rest of the pack literally is clapping for the leaders. And it was incredibly encouraging and thrilling. And I think all 4 of them are terrific athletes. And I think all 4 of them have found a way to have enjoyment in sport, which to me is the goal.
So do you think somewhere on the agenda or the bucket list is to be running with one or all of them, some kind of marathon?
I'd love that, but I truly am not an evangelist for any particular sport, including the marathon. I think for me, it's been great. But I don't know that it's necessarily the right thing for them. It takes a lot of time. It is a big commitment. And you really have to want to do it. And, you head out for one of those long training runs on a cold weekend morning, depending on where you're living. But I used to do these in the Northeast. That's a tough thing to do. And you have to really do it. And you really have to get some weird pleasure out of it. And that's not everybody.
So one of the motivations for you was to expand your health span in addition to your lifespan. Do you feel this level, this volume of training? Have you done any tests? Have you looked at your heart and your vessels and your lungs and, just all the different things that you can test to measure? Have you improved? And, just overall, would you say I've added years to my life and life to my years?
To me, there's just no question that it has dramatically changed my health span already. I'm 63 now, still, doing the same kinds of things that I've been doing for the last 13 years, still running marathons, ran an ultra within the last year, also in 2025. Ran a 50-mile race in 2022, 2 days before my 62nd birthday. 2024, 2 days before my 62nd birthday. And there's no question that all of this fitness has changed how I age, and I'm still fit and active and strong and have good endurance. I've been tested a few times. My cardiovascular health is something like 8 years below my chronological age. It's funny, this whole debate or discussion about longevity and health span, in my mind, I completely separate the two, and I don't overly focus on longevity. I kind of feel like that will be what it will be. But there's a lot of factors there that are outside of my control, but health span is overwhelmingly within my control. And there's just no question that if you take seriously your nutrition, your sleep, your fitness, you can dramatically change your health span. There's just no question. It's not a controversial area within science. It's not like, a lot of other things, supplements and which particular diet is best. There are a lot of things that everybody argues about. But that the basics can really change how you age, it's not controversial.
So you said the first one was in Lake Tahoe, or no?
The 72-mile one was in Lake Tahoe. That's correct.
So that was the Ultramarathon.
Beautiful.
So the elevation there is pretty high. So what is some of the worst and most interesting things you've noticed in some of these different places, like running in Tokyo? I don't know, at least from perception in the United States, we look at it as it has a lot of pollution in the air over there. Lake Tahoe, elevation very high. Did you train for that elevation, or was it something that was surprising to you, or was it pretty easy to overcome that?
I trained for it, and I actually acclimated to it. I went out there like 5 days early, and actually like a month before I was able to do some of my longest training runs at altitude. So I think for that kind of altitude, you actually do need to you need to take some steps to be ready for it. I think the big challenge for me at Lake Tahoe, which had also been a problem for me in Comrades, is both of those races had a lot of climbing and a lot of descending. And while you might assume that the climbing is worse, and it certainly is slower, the descending is actually much more punishing on the body. And so at Lake Tahoe, I started to have severe knee pain after about 8 hours of running, and I still had, I think, over 40 miles to cover, and actually decided to pull out of the race. But then decided, you know what, there's no rush to get out of this race. Let me just try to change my strategy a little bit and see if I can settle this knee down. And so, just kind of put off the decision to quit for a few hours. And then over the course of those few hours, kind of found a rhythm that was working for me and realized, you know what, I think I can do this. And there's a sign that I always used to still see at marathons, something like pain is temporary, victory is forever. And I thought about that sign, and I thought, you know what, if I can finish that, this is unpleasant, but if I can finish this race, this will be an accomplishment that I can cherish for the rest of my life. And not that I've had a rest of life since then, but it's been 2 years, and I think about that race all the time, and I cherish all the time the fact that I stayed in it and managed to complete it.
So
Well,
what's
during
on
the
the? Go ahead, Kelly.
I
Sorry.
was gonna say during the race, what kind of support can you get and continue? Like, are there not a sag wagon necessarily, but for your body, can you stop and get a massage? Can you put a wrap on? Can you what are the rules? What's allowed during a race that you can still get support and continue? Ice
Yeah,
packs. I mean, what can you do?
it's funny. It's a good question. In Comrades, they actually have student physical therapists on the side of the road, and you can stop, and they will literally, kind of like a pit crew in a in a
Okay.
car race, they will
That's
slather
awesome.
some arnica gel on your leg and just.
A little adjustment.
And I actually did it because I was having hamstring spasms, and it did actually help a bit. In Lake Tahoe, I had my own support. That big friend of mine who got me into running in the first place, Jason. He basically, I rented a car, and he would meet me every 2 hours, and I'd replenish my food, replenish my hydration. The race started at 9 o'clock at night, hence the name Midnight Express. And my coach had told me that if I really was feeling exhausted at some point, I might want to take a 20-minute nap. And so when my knee started to hurt, that was one of my decisions was, let me try that 20-minute nap. And so I popped a couple of Advil and hoped that during the 20 minutes it would start to work. And so met Jason, fully reclined the passenger seat and, catnapped for 20 minutes and then kept going. So yeah, I mean, basically for those longer races, you tend often to have to provide your own support, but sometimes they also have aid stations.
Mark,
Kelly,
sorry,
you ready to do one or what? You look like you're ready. Kelly does
Well,
everything. She's on vacation. She's working this. She's got blood tests going.
so
She's half her
years
age
ago,
biologically. So
I was living in the Northeast years ago, and a friend of mine said they were going to ride their bike from the Golden Gate Bridge to the Brooklyn Bridge. So I was setting some goals. So I just said, I'll ride in the last leg with you. At the time, I didn't have a bike. In my mind, the last leg was New Jersey to New York. Well, I get sent an itinerary about April, and I see people meeting him at different points along the way. And I see Kelly, Ohio. I'm like, Ohio? I better buy a bike. So it's still snowing in New Jersey. I go out, I buy a bike. I did one Century ride in May, and then in June I had a friend drop me, my bike, and my duffel bag off in Ohio, and I rode 100 miles a day over the Adirondack Mountains for 6 days and did cross the Brooklyn Bridge. So that's the most that I've done consecutively, and it was a lot of fun, and I would probably do it again
That is
with
really
the right
impressive.
people and a sag wagon. It was a lot of fun.
Wow.
So Jeff, thinking about recovery, I mean, obviously you're building up a lot of free radicals, and what type of recovery happens after a race or after a long training?
You sort of, well, you taper before the race. You take your training down for a few weeks before. Then you do a reverse taper afterward. You take your training down and slowly build back up. I'm still kind of finding the right balance. There have been years where I've done, like in the last 8 months, I ran 2 marathons and a 50-kilometer race. I think I did overdo it slightly. And so I've decided with my coach for the next 12 months until the next marathon, I'm going to focus on speed. Just keep cross training, focus on flexibility. I've started to get more serious about yoga. I'm doing ice baths for recovery. Those seem to really be helping a ton. I'm now doing those twice a week, 3 minutes each time. As I'm getting older, I am trying to be more serious about my recovery. I still see a physical therapist really on a preventative basis about once every 5 or 6 weeks. Just trying to do everything I can to sort of stay in the game because in many ways, you can do the same thing through your 50s and 60s that you could do younger. I think the big difference is it's a little bit easier to get hurt, and it takes a little bit longer to recover from being hurt. So
For
I'm trying to do
sure.
what I can to kind of head those things off.
Hey, Kelly, you think Dr. Gladden could optimize Jeff here? Well, I don't. Dr. Gladden runs
Absolutely.
a longevity clinic, so
Yeah, if you get into the Dallas area, you let us know and we'll
Amazing.
get you set up at the longevity clinic. Yeah, that would be great. What was I just thinking of that was just slipped to my mind? My question. Mark, and I
so
cut you off before your question.
no, that's okay. You know, it was interesting when I was doing research for the Ironmans. I was like, man, there's got to be a lot of people that drop out of this thing, and it's very low. There was no hard statistics to it, but it seems to be a lot of people that go into this thing actually finish it. I mean, I saw as low as 4%, 3%, upwards to about 10, 20, 30%. It varies on the races. Did you notice a lot of that in some of these races you were in, or no?
I think, well, the second Ironman that I did, there were strong headwinds on the bike. I think like 20-mile-an-hour headwinds, and it was a hot day. And so the attrition rate for that particular race was about 22, was I think 20%, 22% in my age group, which was pretty high. That was almost 1 in 4 for my age group that started but didn't finish. I think more typically, my sense was it was closer to 10%. I think people do a good job of kind of policing themselves. In other words, even though anybody can enter an Ironman, there are no qualifiers for it. I think people are smart enough to realize you don't want to do it unless you really are prepared. Otherwise, it's going to be an absolutely miserable day, and it's not going to end well.
So I want to dig into the book, but before we do that, what would you say to somebody right now? You know, our group is vast. I mean, obviously, we have a select group of people over 50 sitting here right now. They're at the kind of twilight of their career, looking for something that they could sink their teeth into. What would you say to them or suggest to them as what they could possibly do in this space? You know, what should they look out for? What benefit would they get out of this thing as opposed to doing something else, you know, fitness wise?
Well, I think to me the critical thing is we should all be serious about our fitness. The kind of guideline that I got from one of the early books that I read was we should be working out 6 days a week, at least 45 minutes each time. Ideally, 4 aerobic sessions, 2 weight training sessions, and I kind of treated those as minimums. I think I think those are good guidelines for most of us, and I think people should try to find a way to get as close to that as they can, doing things that they enjoy. And you have to do some experimenting. You can rock, you can do Pilates, you can do yoga, you can swim, you can row, you can hike. There's no end to what's out there. Now you may have to really try some things and give them a fair chance before you can decide that you don't like something, because of course the first time can be physically unpleasant and can feel awkward, and you may think that you're not going to like it, but you do have to be prepared to persevere, at least for a little while, before you can truly reject something. But I do think we want to find things that we enjoy. But I think if you can do that, you really can enjoy life in the way that you've become accustomed to, whether it's, hiking, skiing, seeing the world, picking up your grandchildren, putting your suitcase in the overhead bin in the airport, whatever it might be. you can be vital and in the game for a lot longer if you can take seriously your need to basically attend to the physical.
So you did a half marathon was your real first event, correct?
My half marathon was my first, I guess, distance event.
Distance event.
Done maybe three or four 10Ks before I did the half, and I think
Okay, so 10Ks.
two sprint triathlons before I did that half.
I'm trying to paint a picture of somebody who's listening or watching this, and they're sitting there going, you know what? I got some gas in my gas tank. Let me see if I could actually measure up to this thing. So you did a couple of 10Ks to see, what that was like. Then you moved up to what?
Then moved up to the half marathon. And there are people who I've read before, and I think there's a lot of truth to this. Some people argue the half marathon is the perfect distance because it's a serious race. You have to prepare for it. You have to do the training, but you can do the training and still like basically have a normal schedule. Like your long run isn't going to be 3 or 4 hours. Your long run might be, an hour and a half, 2 hours at the most, depending on your speed. But even the 10K distance is awesome. I mean, there are folks who might just get a lot of pleasure out of training for speed, running shorter distance races, but doing them in a serious way. Or again, just staying away from this whole racing thing entirely and just finding, group fitness classes, whatever sort of speaks to you. And I think, Kelly, to your point about groups and community and social, group fitness can be a wonderful, wonderful way to get serious about taking care of your body and also being around others who are, kind of like-minded and on the same journey.
Yes, for sure. I remember my question from before. So triathlons are not a poor man's sport. I have not looked it up recently, but I think the average income of a triathlete is about 132,000. And the wetsuit, the planes, the running shoes, the physical therapist, the time it takes to train. And most sports are not. My daughter's an equestrian. My son did baseball. I mean, all of these things are an investment. So can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think triathlon, definitely it is probably the costliest of the different sports, particularly the bike. And truly a good bike does make a difference. Now, having said that, I've always been a big fan of the 80-20 rule. And I think for 20% of the cost, you can get 80% of the performance. And so, for example, for me, when I started to go into longer distance triathlons, I got an entry-level carbon fiber bike. You really have to have a decent carbon fiber bike. But my reasoning was, okay, but I'll get kind of the lowest cost one that's still from a good brand and a good basic bike. And that seemed to work out pretty well for me. So I think there are some things you can do to keep those costs down. But look, the consequences of not being healthy, those can be costly. And so I think you have to factor all of that in when you start looking at price tags.
So what does an entry-level bike cost?
At the time that I bought that one, it was about somewhere between $1,600 and $1,800 bucks. But the really nice ones are $7,000 to $10,000, maybe even a little bit more. But yeah, I think mine was not bad. Probably today you need to spend a little more than that, but I think for $2,000 you could still get quite a nice bike and use it for a bunch of years.
I'll take the electric bike and I'll hit that button. So
yeah, those are wonderful, and that's another.
Those things are, I see an electric
pedal
bike.
assist.
Pedal assist.
Am I the only one that gets
motorcycle? It's fantastic.
Right, am I the only one that gets triggered when I see those things? And I'm just like, why are you even on that thing? I mean, we grew up in a generation.
You got a pedal, yeah. Now, I was in Colorado on a girls' trip, and there was a group of us, and the pedal assist did come in handy when you're going for the day and you're visiting different towns, and it just depends on the purpose. If you're training, that's one thing, but if you're, a way to see the mountains and the towns and the countries, that little pedal assist, I did it for the first time. It was kind of fun, and it did come in handy, and you're not totally burning yourself out. And when you're with a group of different levels,
I guess
it assists, it helps.
I guess.
Not for so much exercise, but just for vacation.
Yeah, I did a group ride like that in West Virginia and did pedal assist. So pedaled the whole time. And basically, I was pedaling. If I had been on a regular bike, I would have been going maybe 15, 16 miles an hour. But because of the electric, I was going like 20 miles an hour, 22 miles an hour. It was delightful. It made for a more fun experience, but I was working the whole time. And I think, I would encourage people, again, not to use it like a motorcycle. If you're just sitting there, working the accelerator, that's not really exercise. But if you're using the pedal assist feature of it, it can be wonderful.
Love that.
I don't know if I agree with that, but that's okay.
Yeah. Have you done it? Don't knock it until you tried
Yeah,
it.
I guess with my knees, I
Next time you're on
probably should.
vacation.
Yeah. Okay. We want to dig into this book. So you have a book called
Racing
Rage
against
Against Time.
racing.
Racing Against Time. So let's talk about that. When did you have the idea about that book? And how long did you chomp on the idea? And then when you put pen to paper, what was that like?
I'd written 2 books before, so the idea of writing books was something that is always on my mind. I think for me, starting in around 2021, maybe after that second Ironman, maybe a little before, I started to feel like there was an arc to the story. In other words, I didn't want to write a fitness book that was just a bunch of amusing anecdotes like, oh, this one time I had a flat tire, oh, this other time I hurt myself and then I recovered. Like, I think that's not really ultimately all that interesting. To me, what I felt was unusual about my story and perhaps of benefit to other people was that I started as late as I did and was able to progress as far as I was able to go. And so wanted to share that with other people who might be looking for inspiration for their own journey. And certainly when I was getting started in particular, I read books like this to get inspired and to help me stay focused and to set new goals and that kind of thing. So basically took me about 3 years or so to write it. The way that I do my writing projects, I basically write for an hour a day, every day, before I train. And so I do that first, and then I do my workouts, and then I start my work day. And I've been pretty consistent about that going back 5, 6, 7 years. And it seems to work well. And, you know, it's another one of these things. You do it every day consistently, and the progress may seem a little slow at the very beginning, but before you know it, you actually do start to move forward in a way that can be quite motivating and exciting.
The compound effect. Yeah, that pebble in the pond and stay consistent. There's so much truth to that. So we will definitely put in the show notes the link to the book, Racing Against Time. What's a good way for people to find that book or learn more about what you're doing?
Great way to find the book, of course, Amazon. It's available in paperback, Kindle versions, and audio. And actually did the narration, which was a first for me among the books that I've written, and that was actually a great experience. And in part, I did that because I've always felt I'm actually a big audiobook listener myself. I like to use them on my long training runs. And when it comes to memoirs, I actually have always enjoyed it when it's the author reading the memoir, because I feel like I'm really getting an enhanced experience, like actually hearing it in their voice. So wanted to provide that experience to listeners. But yeah, and then
Jeff, it's kind of hard for a runner to carry the book and be, reading the book while they're running there. So the audio, I think, makes a little bit more inspirational sense and safety sense there. So just saying.
Very much so. Yeah. And then I have a website, jeffreyeweissauthor.com, and put up things like podcasts where I've appeared. And it's also a place where people can find links to buy the book.
Excellent. Well, Jeff, you've been such an inspiration, especially to our audience who just sees midlife not as the finish line, but as a whole new race, as a new starting line. And we definitely want people to grab your book, Racing Against Time. And if this episode lit a spark in you, then, follow what Jeff said. Get that, take the class, get the coach, read the book, listen to the podcast, and lace up the shoes, start putting one foot in front of the other. And if this episode inspired you or someone else would be inspired by it, then definitely please like and share and subscribe. And just remember that your best chapters can absolutely be ahead of you. Jeff, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks so much. I really appreciated it. And I love the questions and love the conversation.
Hey, Jeff, I got to add something here, Kelly. One of the
Go
things I got out of this darn podcast is something very simple. It's never too late to start something new. I mean, gang, if you're here today, and you got this podcast, you're watching it, you're listening to it, whatever it may be. I always tell everybody, you're here for a reason. Your intuition got you here. You got something chomping at the bit, and you got some fire in the belly that you have not been able to let out there. 48 years old, you started all this, correct?
Yep.
So if you got something burning, man, grab the book, get some inspiration from that. Hook up with Jeff on some of these social accounts that he has here. Take your life to the next level. Hopefully you all got something out of this. Jeff, Jeff runs I always say walk the walk and talk the talk. You run the run, man. So we appreciate having you on the show. As far as everybody else, hopefully you got something out of this episode that you can apply to your life and live a healthier lifestyle. In the meantime, thank you for your two greatest resources, your time and your attention. Hopefully we used it wisely, and we will see you all on the next episode. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.